This story happened when I was 12 years old. My parents got divorced and essentially abandoned me, so I lived with my grandmother. We lived quite peacefully and well off, but one day a tragedy occurred. My grandmother Ruth stepped on a needle. She had to quit her job and stay in the hospital. Leaving for 3 days, she instructed me not to wind up the music box under any circumstances. I didn't have any desire to. The box was too unattractive. Something I didn't know what sat on it, something frightening and covered in what looked like ash or resin. And the box itself was a dirty red color and very chipped. Grandmother Ruth left, and I was alone. It's scary to be alone, so I called some classmates for a sleepover. After changing into pajamas and snacking on popcorn, everyone except me sat down on the bed. That's when my friend saw the box. Unable to resist, she grabbed it and wound it up. She started listening to the melody, and she felt sick. The sound of the box resembled a children's lullaby, only distorted. I ran into the room and, yelling at her, told her to put it back in place. The box, with a plaintive creak, fell silent, and my friend immediately obeyed my request. Calming down, we started watching horror movies. We shook and chattered our teeth for a long time when suddenly something fell in the kitchen and the girls screamed. I started laughing at them and said I had just placed a plate poorly. We went to the kitchen, but the plate I had left on the edge of the table was standing calmly. It wasn't even a plate that fell, but a mug that was standing pressed against the window on the windowsill. The girls panicked, and I just froze. After about a minute, I noticed a strange trail on the parquet. The girls had already scattered, some to the closet, some to the bathroom, and some even to the tub. I don't remember any more who went where. Approaching the bathroom, I turned off the light. At first, my friend just shouted, "Hey!" And then came a long, frightening, heart-wrenching scream. I immediately turned on the light and tried to break down the door. But when I opened it, it was too late. I saw her lying on her back to me, and when I turned her over, I almost screamed myself. Her face was twisted, and she wasn't breathing. I was horrified. It took me a good 5 minutes to realize I couldn't hear the others either. I looked for them everywhere. They were nowhere to be found. Then the oven turned on, although it was always unplugged. I opened it and ran to the room. I cried a lot. As someone whom I couldn't see because of the darkness whispered in my ear, "You will understand everything. Don't tell anyone." I'm the only one left alive. I'm scared. My neighbor now screams at me continuously. Should I bury her head where I buried her body? She woke up in the middle of the night. Her husband was not at home. He had left on a business trip. The children were sleeping in another room. She was lying in bed and could not understand why she had woken up. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. She got up and went to the kitchen. After pouring a glass of water, she sat down in a comfortable armchair and opened the window. She felt cold and melancholy. Lost in thought, at first she did not hear the melody coming from the street, but the melody was approaching and very close. It seemed that it would fly in through the open window any minute. The girl realized that this melody should not exist in principle. It was night outside. Everyone was sleeping. No one could enter the yard, as the house was protected by a high fence and the gates were closed. The girl stayed, went to the children's room to make sure everything was okay with her children, and went to the exit, spellbound by the melody. She put on a plaid blanket and was about to open the door when she decided to look out the window after all. At that very moment, she screamed in horror. Her son was standing outside. He was all dressed in white clothes, but they were dirty and stained with bloody spots. The child was standing and looking in the window. In his hands, He held a music box that played this melody. The girl realized that this was not her son, as a minute ago he was peacefully sleeping in his crib. A shiver ran through her body. She grabbed the door handle tighter and instinctively pulled it towards her. Fear was growing. She checked the lock and squatted down. Then she sat down on the floor altogether. She was afraid to move. She could not go to the room, as she was afraid that she would be seen through the window. The music was approaching her, and the girl could already hear it near the front door. There was a knock. Her heart started beating wildly. Fear paralyzed her whole body. She could not even move. Second, third, fourth knock on the door. Then this creature started knocking and shouting furiously, "Mommy, open the door. I'm cold. Let me into the house. Mommy." The voice was childish at first, but then turned into a rough male and terrifying one. The creature knocked, shouted, and the music played continuously. At one point, the girl thought she would go crazy. She abruptly got up and ran to the room, making sure the children were still peacefully asleep. She sat down on the floor next to her son's crib, wrapped herself in a blanket, and started waiting. I don't know what for, just waiting. The banging and curses continued for some time longer, and then everything went silent. She realized that if she had not looked out the window and had gone outside, something irreparable could have happened. She could not fall asleep, and in the morning, still frightened, she opened the front door and realized that it had not been a terrible nightmare, as the whole door was disfigured and dented from heavy blows.